So here we get into strategies for growth, and as I mentioned, traditional versus growth hacking. And to start off with, I'm going to go into traditional strategies. So there are multiple ways that you can grow your FX business. You can grow the existing business. You can go expand internationally. You can deploy vertical integration strategies, as well as diversify your business. So how do you achieve that? There are three major ways. So internal growth, alliances, and M&A. So I was curious about, what is growth for FX industry, and I pulled some, publicly traded companies, and I looked at their revenues, I plotted them on the chart, and whatever the data was available, and you can see that it really varies, right? So, GMO is the Japanese broker. Interactive Brokers is the U.S. brokerage, and of course they are multi-asset, and you can see that their revenues are in the vicinity of $1 billion plus a year. And then you have Plus 500, which is UK company publicly traded here. Their revenue is 300, I believe, million, and Saxo Bank. So again, when you look at this pattern, you don't really see like a clear growth of. Some companies do observe the growth, but it's nothing explosive. But I mean, it just speaks to the fact that those are probably mature companies. They're not startups. And so for a larger company, obviously, it's harder to grow their business than it is for the startup. With the startups, we obviously see revenues 10 times every year, increasing by 100 times and so forth. And then I was curious also about the profit margin. So I kind of plotted the data for 2014, which was available for all those companies, and it really varies greatly. So you can see that FXCM is probably operated anyways at a 4% margin, versus some of the brokers like Plus 500, topping 40+%, profit margin. And when I say profit margin, that's net income divided by revenue. So when I look at all these companies, and all of them are publicly traded, that's the information is publicly available. And I take an average, average profit margin for FX brokers is 28%. Is it a lot? Little? I don't know. So I looked at, average profit margin for all U.S. firms and across all industries. That's 14%. So 28% sounds like a premium. It's a good, healthy profit margin. So I guess that's why we do still have a lot of new companies coming into the space, because the profit margins are definitely there. Year over year, are they growing? I don't see a clear pattern. I don't see that 2014 wasn't that good of a year for some people for obvious reasons. But yeah, the margins are kind of all over the place. For most people, some are up, some are down. There's no clear pattern. I don't really see a clear pattern on that. And how does it compare to other industries? So I already gave you an example that all industries across the United States, their average profit margin is 14-something%. Again, this is U.S. Industries, and then it's Forbes Analytics. The most profitable industry is health. It makes sense because, we have very expensive healthcare system in the United States. But finance is coming right after, along with the technology services. So those are one of the most profitable domains across all industries, which was, again, interesting. And from that point, I concluded that, that's still a very lucrative industry, and a lot of opportunities are still there. And then, we do have quite a few new market entrants. So again, remember that chart from the beginning where we talked about, what are the ways to grow the company? And mergers and acquisitions is one of the traditional ways. And we probably observe more of those in the industry. With the tightening regulations and increase in capital requirements, there's a lot more mergers and acquisitions happening. And so this is the global M&A chart, and what's been happening in the M&A market, mergers and acquisition, the value of mergers and acquisitions. And so in 2015, if you look, it's $5 trillion worth of deals, mergers and acquisition deals that happened, and average size is 128 million. So again, putting numbers in the perspective, how does that relate? How does it compare to the FX industry? So this is an interesting diagram. This is the capital invested in all FX-related firms, and that includes brokerages as well as fintech firms, technology firms that are supplying technology for FX industry. So the blue bars are the number of deals. So you can clearly see that the number of deals, grows year over year. I mean, 2017 is not over yet, so. Clear pattern, there's more mergers and acquisitions happening again, probably for the reasons that I already mentioned, tightening regulatory requirements, capital requirements. And the black pattern line, or the yellow line is the capital invested in the FX industry. And you can see that the capital invested peaked in 2015, and I would imagine that's probably because quite a few people, few companies in the space needed capital injection after certain market events. So this is the breakdown of all the deals that happened by the type of the deals. Mergers and acquisitions clearly is, the largest piece in the pie. Early stage VC, venture capital. Yeah, the venture capitalists, they still fund FX companies, mostly fintech companies, so technology arm. Buyouts, another big piece of the pie, some angel investors, some seed investment, and all kinds of investment activities. But interestingly enough, the average size of the capital invested, every year is 3.6 million. This is the deal size in FX. Compare that, we'll look at the global chart, to 124 million. But again, this is an average, right? And I don't know how much it tells us. So 314 deals done in the last 12 years. Not bad. And for a total amount of 6.3 billion that was invested in FX companies as well as technology companies. By the way, the source of all this information is the company called PitchBook. They are, used by a lot of firms in the Silicon Valley. That's how they look for, similar companies to theirs, and how they, look for venture capitalists that they talk to, if they're looking to raise money. And so when you look at the top 25 deals in the last 12 years, those are the deals, and you probably recognize some of the names. You see that Deutsche Börse bought, acquired 360T technology, and I don't know how many of you are familiar. That's one of the platforms, FX platforms, not just FX, but Wall Street system. This is the back office solutions for FX and non-FX companies and so forth. KCG HubSpot, you probably all know HubSpot. Systems is also FX ECN. So just an interesting analysis. And so top 25 deals. If you guys are interested in learning more, I can email us after, and I'll send you all the details from here. The Excel spreadsheet with all the details. This is just a snapshot. Another way to grow is build a vertical. What is vertical in FX? I mean, it's basically all the services that if you run the FX brokerage, you outsource a lot of them. So to build a vertical, you need to kind of internalize a lot of things that you currently outsource. And you see some of the companies in the industry already doing it. Like you have a retail brokerage, that's your core business. You want to build a vertical. You source liquidity for your retail brokerage from institutional brokerage, and so that's kind of the next brick in that wall. You put it on top. You start offering institutional. Proprietary trading platform, and all those companies that we looked at, a lot of the public companies in analysis, Interactive Brokers, Saxo, Plus 500, all of them have their own proprietary technology. And again, this is also an attempt to vertically integrate their business. Own IT and infrastructure. I mean, obviously, this is a part of everyday life for FX brokerage, dealing with the technology, dealing with the infrastructure, hosting your MT4 server, hosting your platform. And some of the companies, actually quite a few companies in the space, take it in-house, right? I mean, try to get their own space in a data center, their own rack, their own cage. So take it in-house as another way of vertical integration. CRM and marketing platforms. It's also a good example from the industry because we know that a lot of small brokers who are coming in, they probably outsource, but once they grow bigger, it becomes very challenging to work with the outsourcing provider for those things like CRM and marketing. So at some point they take it in-house and they customize it towards their business processes. Banking is another one, and I'm sure many people attempt to vertically integrate it, but it's extremely challenging, obviously, for obvious reasons. But banking is at the core of operation of any FX brokerage. That's where you accept customers' money. You wire in, wire out, and if you take the probably the good example of the vertical integration using banking is Swiss companies, because obviously to conduct FX business in Switzerland you have to have a banking license. So ultimately you are a bank as well. So this is kind of the vertical integration, and I gave you some examples of what that means. But I'm sure many of you who run your FX brokerages, you obviously recognize all these areas, and you probably know which ones you keep in house and which ones you outsource. All right, I talk about international expansion. This is a very hot topic, and FX industry is there's multiple ways that it's expanded internationally, but that's certainly one of the most important modes of growth. So I actually took this map from the Finance Magnates directory, and it just represents where the companies are registered. Jurisdictions, right? So they have a license, FCA, European license, and so the map looks like that. But I think the reality is more like that, which is a lot of companies. When they say international expansion nowadays, it means go to Asia, and mainly go to China. So we see an influx of companies trying to penetrate the Asian markets, mainly China and Southeast Asia. And I think, it's my personal opinion, that some markets are left underserved, like India, for example, and Latin America, where there's a lot of opportunities probably there, but there's another concept that we're going to talk about, like social proof. Everyone goes there, and so and you see other people succeed, so you want to kind of repeat that success. And go and try to grow the business there. I mean, of course, we all know that there's business there, and there's a lot of traders and the big market. And I think that's kind of the reality of FX business at the moment. Everyone is trying to internationally expand, mainly to the regions, the Asian regions. I'm not going to talk about how you go there. Just wanted to kind of touch upon why you go there, right? And why FX brokerages go to China. Well, obviously for obvious reasons. I mean, China is the second world economy right now, and economists estimate that by 2020 it's going to be the world's #1 economy, which means that there's a lot of discretionary income, and there's a lot of people who are looking to invest, and hence it makes sense that a lot of businesses, not just FX businesses, but just generally a lot of businesses try to expand into Chinese market. I'm going to briefly touch upon diversification. It means different things to different brokers, but general patterns that I observe, diversification for FX companies would be execution models, and the example of that would be, B-book, which is warehousing all your risk, STP, send all the trades to the interbank market, and hybrid, one of the example, another way of different execution model. You have some STP flow, some B-book flow. You have criteria that you use to define which flow goes which way. Asset classes, and I think we see a lot of that with the recent, I guess cryptocurrency is emerging as another asset class. A lot of brokers are going after CFDs, CFDs based on equities, metals, commodities, FX, stocks, futures. One of the ways to diversify. Platform offerings, a lot of brokers start with the MetaTrader product, and then either add their own platform or try to source another commercial platform. Customer service, I think that's one of the great ways to differentiate is actually deliver the great value through, excellent customer service to your customers. Some people do that, some people not. Technology, differentiator, big differentiator, big way to diversify yourself from other offerings, and value-added services. And, those could be many things, banking or, I'm just thinking of examples. Like additional tool, maybe some analytics for the clients, maybe like some wallets and things like that. Something that they cannot find elsewhere, but at other brokerage. All right, so we're at the point now, and I don't know if I'm on time, but I'm going to talk about growth hacking. So that's less of a traditional way. And again, this concept comes from marketing, so it's experimental. They say that the growth hacking is more of a mental state rather than actual business strategy. But I'm not going to give tips how to do the growth hacking. I guess I'm just going to talk about some examples from the industry that I thought could qualify to be the growth hacking examples. But before we get into that, I also thought, okay, well, growth hacking, relates very much to marketing. So what are the marketing spendings in FX industry? And again, these are all the publicly traded companies, all the information that is available in their annual reports. And I took marketing spending as a percentage of revenue, and I found some interesting statistics. Like Plus 500, for example, is a great example. They spend over 30% of their revenue on marketing, which is a big number out of that 300 million that we saw earlier. Saxo Bank, over 20%. XTB, CMC, DMM. DMM is another great example. It's a Japanese company, and they are very much similar to Plus 500 and their business models. Like Plus 500, they don't have any sales. They're basically marketing only. They don't have any sales stuff. I think they have, in the FX division, they have less than 10 people. So it's very, very lean. And they spend, around 15%, I think, from their revenue on marketing. So, people, I think FXCM and Gain, those are the recent numbers, 2014. Yes, their marketing spending is under 10%, but, that probably means that they invested a lot in marketing before, and they already kind of built their brand, so they can cut on marketing expense. And some of the companies that are trying to push their service into the market probably spend more on marketing, just being aggressive. So average is 14.1%, but it's hard to look at just average because it varies so greatly from company to company. Okay, so one of the examples of growth hacking that I thought, I'm not sure how relevant it is now, but I've seen it, I think back in the day, maybe 2012, when FXCM started offering, free VPS with, if you open a trading account with them, and if you trade over a certain, certain volume, and it's a psychological concept that, can explain this phenomenon. I thought it was the law of reciprocity. And what that means is, we're all good people, right? So when, I do the favor to you, you probably want to pay it back. And that's kind of, I guess that's how they appeal to traders, because, they were giving them the free VPS, and in return, the traders were trading a little bit more. So that worked really great. And, when I Googled the free VPS for FX account, I actually see quite a few companies doing it now. So it's also probably a great example of a value-added service. I don't have the exact number of how much volume they drove from this initiative, but I'm pretty sure that was some significant number. Okay, so community-driven platform, in our century, especially with the new generation, community-driven is very important. And I think one of the successes of MetaTrader 4, the reason why it's successful is because of the community behind it. I believe there's over 1 million registered users on the community website, mql4.com. And, those people register there, they have discussions, they have forums, they share strategies, they do the jobs for each other. If you want to, develop an expert advisor, we can find someone to do that for you. So it's very much a community-driven platform. Other examples of community-driven platform that I thought, were relevant, eToro network, that isn't, they have a great network of, people who are sharing strategies and, leaders and followers, and same with the Mirror Trader, which is, I believe, Trade and See is the company behind it. So they established following, they established community, and, the people are just really getting attached to the product because, it's user-driven. It's really not, like with MetaTrader 4, it's probably not broker driven. It's really user driven. Users love it, and they want to share their strategy. They can buy strategies. They can develop their own. So it really is a community driven phenomenon. I actually saw this in FXCM numbers in 2012. They've introduced MetaTrader 4 platform. Before that, they had their own platform. And they still have it, obviously. I think it's called Trading Station, right? So they had it, and it was doing well. But MetaTrader 4 by that time became kind of a mainstream platform, so they decided to add it, and they saw a 30% increase in their trading volume. So community-driven platform, really important. And those are just some of the examples. I'm sure there's many more. Educating, creating loyalty through education. I think it's kind of a trend now, and from what I observed at the Sexpo, there's a lot of people who are providing services now. They're out. You can outsource video production, for example. People, like, there are companies that will do a video training, so market commentary, and the examples of educating clients is Daily Effects, and it was. Part of FXCM, and they were driving a lot of their users and a lot of traffic from this website because people search, how do I trade FX courses, what is SPIP, what is this, what is that. They end up at the website, and again, law of reciprocity applies, right? Because they get the value out of the website, they learn something new, and when they're ready to open an account, they go open an account with with the company that's promoted by this educational website. Forex Lab is another example of that. I think it's part of Finance Magnates now. So, incentive programs. Now, I know it's a really big way of it's promotional, right? Way of attracting users, attracting traders to your brokerage. Now, I know the regulators are actively clamping down on that, so we got to be careful with it. But obviously, this is another way, some creative promotions to attract clients to your company. And it could be, in the US, a great example would be Dropbox. Everyone knows what Dropbox is, and their example of growth hacking is, if you want to refer a friend, I'll give you some free space. That works, right? Refer 20 friends to them, got the terabyte of space. I'm happy. Friends are happy. Everyone's happy. Bonuses, yeah, that's I guess it's whatever the regulator allows, but also a great way. Get started. Put some money in. I'll add some. And you get more buying power, get trading. So that's another great way of another great example of growth hacking. Sponsorships. Sure, you all see the sponsorship deals with the FX brokerages. This is another great way to get access to your target audience because I don't really have a typical profile of FX, trader, but I would imagine it's probably a man, probably between 20 and 30, and guess what? The sports fans are probably kind of the same target audience. So when you sponsor, a team or a particular player or a sportsman, you get access to that target audience, to the email database, and of course exposure. Your brand exposure to your target audience. It's a great way to promote the brand and increase the brand awareness. Social proof. So with social proof, I was trying to explain this then with like a psychological concept, and I think social proof is the most relevant. And I can think of like a latest Bitcoin frenzy from that perspective, because what the social proof means is, I think this psychologist had an experiment where they put a man on the streets of New York, and he was just plainly standing on the street and looking up at, just looking up, and there were people passing by, and they determined that 70% of them would do the same, just look up. There's nothing there, but everyone would still look up. So the same concept applies to a lot of frenzy, like around the Bitcoin, for example. I mean, we see that everyone now adds cryptocurrencies. And there's all kinds of social media things like FOMO, which is like fear of missing out. Everyone is trying to get in because they're so scared that they're not going to become next Bitcoin billionaires, or some people are just so negative about it, which is FUD is another one that I see on Twitter trending all the time. It's like fear, uncertainty, doubt. The JP Morgan CEO comes out and says no, it's a fraud, worse than the tulip bubble. And so there's like this again, and then the network effect, right? The following, the community, everyone is sharing and tweeting, and all that thing. So it becomes like a social phenomenon. Brexit is another example. Oh my God, UK is gonna, exit the EU. We're gonna do something. Sell my euros. I don't know. I've seen quite a lot of that happening as well. So we're social creatures. That makes sense. Keeping it simple. I guess it's for some companies, and I have a quote from Albert Einstein here. It's a great competitive strategy. And example I was given earlier is DMM Securities, which is a Japanese broker, and they're really trying to keep it simple, and that's their competitive edge. I came in there and I was trying to sell them social trading and MAM and algo trade, and then she said we don't need any of that. We just want to keep things simple. We have one platform. We don't allow algo trading. We just want point and click. That's it. That's our strategy. It works, and we're reaching new highs every month. We don't need anything. We just want to keep it simple. So I think it works based on that example. Bringing like-minded people together. A great example is today's summit, right? So we're all here because we share common interests. We want to learn something new about the industry and community. And Finance Magnates does a great job of bringing us here together, and we all learn a lot of new things and learn about new companies, new strategies, new everything. So Finance feeds cups, and from those of you who are from Cyprus, you probably know, they organize it. It's a great way also for people to get together at the networking event, share their ideas, share their views and talk, and again, creating the sense of community, which is really important in the 21st century. Affiliated IBs. I'm sure you all, everyone who runs the brokerage knows that this is one of the major ways to drive business. How do you attract IBs? Everyone has their own methods. And I just remembered an example. I think it was a company here in the UK called TradeNext. And a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, when we came to Macau for the expo, I was amazed. They brought in the entire charter plane with the IBs. It's a great service, right? Like you keep your IBs happy, they bring you a lot of business. And I'm sure if you attended 3 years ago, you probably were amazed. I was like, oh, where are those people coming from? Well, they were all IBs, and it was a nice treat from the company to actually bring them over to the event. So keeping IBs happy, I know some people in China also create events for the IBs, educational events, or just general social events, things like that. Social media. I mean, this is a big phenomenon, right? Everyone, all the marketers are now in the social media, trying to promote the content everyone knows about. It's great when the content go viral. There's a lot of, tips and articles out there about how do you make your content go viral? How do you make it so unique that people want to share it over and over again? And some FX companies actually nail it, and I see Vipra Markets here as an example. This is a service called BuzzSumo. So when you search a particular keyword, it gives you the most shared articles over the last year. And that's something about start, I guess it's a landing page, open live account, and they created a big following. I mean, it's 43,000 likes and shares, and you can see 43,000 on Facebook, 134 on LinkedIn. So this is another way to create brand awareness, spread the word about your service. Everyone knows, I'm sure a lot of us use LinkedIn. So, when your friends like something, your update goes to the second degree network, and that's how your content basically propagates all throughout the network.